Awesome.
Awesome. Okay. And if you want to, if anybody wants to share in the chat where they're calling in from today, I know some of us are returnees from earlier in the week, but I do see some new names. So if you want to share in the chat where you're dialing in from or logging in from today, that would be amazing, so we know where we all are, relatively speaking. Got Halifax and Maryland, Florida, California. Katie is in Ontario, Colorado Springs, Maryland, Virginia, Winnipeg. My word, we got people in everywhere. Tinker. Love it. Thank you all for sharing that in the chat. Okay. So just as you're logging in, we're just about to get started. So if you haven't yet had an opportunity to mute yourself, we will ask that you do so now so that we don't get any background noise or feedback as Katie's sharing her presentation with us today. But again, if you do have questions or comments and want to share those in the chat, we'd be more than excited to share those with Katie as we go along. And I'm sure she'll be open for questions at the end of the session as well. So I think we'll get started. I'm just going to take just a minute to welcome Katie and say thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited not only to have you and bring your expertise, but to just be using the amazing people that we already have here on staff at MFS to further highlight the programs, services, and things we offer as a family support program. So thank you again, Katie. If you haven't had a chance to work with Katie or you didn't know what Katie's role here at MFS was, but Katie has been managing the spousal employment programs with MFS for the last 5 years. And during this time, she has definitely learned and accumulated valuable tips and strategies to help military spouses thrive in their careers, which is something that I think that we all need more of. Katie is an experienced and passionate employment practitioner and a general program manager who uses resourcefulness, creativity, and strategic thinking to maximize output, achieve goals, and help others. Well, hello. We need Katie, can you just come over and hang out? I need all those things. Katie has worked in non-profit organizations as well as government, and that has guided her to an appreciation for and specialization in the benefits of community partnerships and the art of partnership development. So without further ado, Katie, I'm going to hand the ball over to you, and so looking forward to this session this morning.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. And thanks for giving me the opportunity. We at headquarters encourage any opportunity to be able to interact with military spouses because sometimes our interaction is not few and far between, but it's definitely one of our favorite things to do because we can often be planning programs and looking at data and talking to other people in the field to see what the needs are, but we're always very excited when we can interact with you guys directly. And so that's really what also I want today's session to be about. In no way do the reason why I titled, I think, can you see you're able to see the top career lessons screen, Michelle? I just switched over. I just want to make sure.
Sorry, I don't see it yet. If everybody, I'm just wondering, Joanna, are you still with us there?
I just popped it over.
Yeah. Okay. No, you're okay. That's okay. Thank you. Yeah, we're good there. I think everybody should be able to see it now. And Katie, you have the ball, so you can adjust your slides as necessary.
Excellent. Okay. So the reason I wanted to be very clear when I came out for this presentation that I'm not necessarily coming at it as an expert myself, but that I'm coming at it as someone who's accumulated information from military spouses over the last few years. I do hear some feedback. Is anyone else hearing that?
I think it's just because your volume is so loud.
Okay, let me just keep it.
Or if you have a headset.
No, I don't have a headset. Is it, can you hear it, Michelle? Okay, so yeah, so I wanted to be sure when I was coming at this presentation that I'm not necessarily speaking as an expert on all things military spouses, but that over the last 5 years, I think I'm actually counting, I'm about 6. I've had some leaves within those 6 years, but have consistently been in this role and have been able to, I would like to say, just gather data on what some success stories and tips that military spouses have told me, have submitted through various other ways, and have accumulated all that data. So it's almost like I'm data mining the success of military spouses. I'm not really coming at it with this is coming from me and my expertise. So I want to make sure that that's at the forefront. I do have a little bit of a background in careers and career training, and so I have put a little bit of a spin on it, but for the most part, this is directly from the mouths of military spouses, and I probably wouldn't be surprised if one of you see your own words in this presentation if you've submitted them through our program, giving us permission to use them. So that would be actually excellent. I should have allowed for a prize if anyone sees their own words in this presentation, but I can't send anything through the computer, so that's not going to happen. I will just get going just on a little bit about me. I know that Michelle just gave you a quick overview, but just to let you know some smaller details about me, I guess. I'm from New Brunswick, so I don't know if there's any original New Brunswickers on the call. I'm very proud to be from New Brunswick, but I am working in Ottawa, and I've been here for the last 12 years, I think.
Katie, you definitely have a few New Brunswickers on the line, I can guarantee.
Excellent. That always makes me so happy. We have quite a few in our office, too. And so I have no military affiliation, and I actually came into the position very green when it comes to the military. In New Brunswick, I'm from Moncton, so I'm not from anywhere close at the time. There's a smaller base in Moncton, but not really even having any family member or any close friend being part of the military. And so when I hit the ground back in 2015, I had a lot of learning to do, and it definitely took me a while to get up to speed, but I do, and I'm always learning. I'm still always asking a lot of questions, but I've been able to rely on the expertise of a lot of military family members and actually military members who are able to help me make that transition. And the final thing, I did probably just try really way too hard to try to include a picture of my dog into this presentation, but I found that this was probably the slide that I'd be able to do it in. And one just quirky fact, I never thought I'd be a dog person, but I am one of those dog people. So I don't know, this is my dog Odo, and we just got him last year. So I don't know if there's anyone else on the call who's a dog person, because if you are, you'll totally appreciate what I'm saying right now, and if you're not, you potentially just rolled your eyes. So that's totally fine, but I wanted to kind of break the ice with giving you a little bit about me. And where we're going to go today. So like I said, we're looking at some tips for military spouses for you going and navigating your career. But we're going to start off by hearing from you, actually. I'd love to hear, there's a few questions that I have, but I'm going to get us to interact through the chat. And so I want to hear about your career and lessons learned as well. Then I'm going to give you a little bit of detail on where the data and the information came from for today's session, just so you have, where we kind of got these testimonies and these successful tips from military spouses. And then throughout the session, actually, not just all at once, there's going to be resources integrated. So you will get a link to like guides to printout or like a copy of the presentation with all the links in it. And so a lot of the resources we try to direct you to things that we've created, and then some of them are also external. So the external links, obviously, we don't own. But it was just a resource that we do refer people to because we do think it is good. So all throughout the presentation, we'll be going through some resources. But that being said, if you do have questions, this presentation is very informal. We are a small group, so feel free to ask questions either in the chat or put up your hand. And Michelle, if you do see any hands up, because I can't see the full participant list right now.
Yeah,
if you do, just let me know if you see a hand up, but feel free to ask any questions, whether about the resources or even if you have a comment. Love to hear from you because, again, we're talking about information that's been provided by military spouses for military spouses. So we're really looking for ongoing interaction throughout today's session. Before we get started, so like I said, I do want to hear from you guys. And in the chat right now, hopefully everyone can access the chat. If you could summarize your career journey as a military spouse in one sentence. That might be hard. Summarizing is actually a really hard thing to do. But if you could summarize your career journey as a military spouse in one sentence, could you do that? Could you pop that in the chat right now? Just so we can kind of see where we're all like what direction or what background we're all coming from. And if I was in person, I would say the first 3 people to do it would get a chocolate bar. But since I'm not in person with you, I can't throw chocolate at you. So if you could just type in the chat. Yeah, so we got some, yeah. So awesome. I'm not going to talk because I want to give you time to type in. So here we have, I'll just read some of them out. We have a military family advocate and successful entrepreneur and mom, always a bit disjointed. Another person said, uphill battle, consistent but isolated due to being virtual. Melissa said, a chance to use transferable skills in a variety of settings and allow for flexibility and new adventures. Always the new girl. Ugh. That's a hard place to be. I'm not a fan of being the new girl. Great. Okay, so it kind of goes hand in hand with, oh, we got some more here. Military family support, always social services mixed with creative avenues of business. And a struggle to maintain my career identity. Yeah, thanks for that, Brenda. So this meme, I feel like could possibly definitely hit home with some of you, especially based on some of these comments. And it was a meme that came up actually on the military family page, Facebook page a few years ago, and it was very well received by you guys. And so it just hit my mind when we were talking about this. And although I feel like most of us right now feel like our entire life is recalculating because of COVID, you know, as a military spouse, it's just very known that you are experts at recalculating and recalculating and recalculating. And so, you know, that's one place where we're coming at today's session with the tips, you know, because of this ongoing need to have to be recalculating and like someone said there, trying to figure out what your career is, you know, where you're headed, always being the new girl. You know, there are a few different tips and a few different strategies that you might want to implement as a military spouse, as opposed to just the average civilian citizen who's going throughout a career in one location. So one more question before we actually get into our tips. And so this question is, what is the #1 career tip you would pass on to another military spouse looking for career guidance? So you're sitting down for coffee, COVID's gone, you're actually allowed to go to a coffee shop and I'm not sure actually the restrictions in the US right now, but we can't do this. And you can sit down with another military spouse, potentially younger, potentially just really new to the military family life. What #1 career guidance tip would you give them? Don't give up on that dream job. So you have so many skills that are valuable. Don't be afraid to be confident and proud. Go into healthcare and maintain your license everywhere you go. Yeah. I think a few of you actually got my presentation in advance, so because really a lot of these things are directly what we're going to be talking about today, so that's great. So think outside the box. What you did before might not be able to be translated to your new career, but think how you might be able to apply your skills in a new way and take some chances. Be open to potential opportunities. Sometimes something that seems like a perfect fit turns into the perfect, doesn't seem like a perfect fit, turns into the perfect opportunity. And don't underestimate your skills and experience. Yep, network and try new things. So I really like these comments because one of the things that, and it's actually towards the end of the presentation we're going to talk about, is the attitude that we've seen kind of a trend with people who have been able to, or feedback that we've heard from some military spouses surrounds the area of kind of attitude and how you're embracing the challenges associated with your career. And some of these tips look like a lot of you have actually come to a point where you're looking at the opportunities that it's given you, which is encouraging. So great, awesome. I will actually probably data mine this data and put it into our system so that we, those tips we have them for down the road. So I'm headed into our tips here. Where I got this data from, so over the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a lot of panel discussions and group chats, especially when we were first starting out all things military spousal employment. So when I started in this position, we didn't have too much happening on a national level. Most of the things were happening at the local MFRC level. And so when we started doing things nationally, there were definitely lots of opportunities where we were talking with military families, talking with MFRCs, and we were able to gather some data that way. We've also had initiated sessions on Facebook through My Voice and other surveys that we've done where we've really asked military spouses for some of their career advice. And we've had one specific campaign was to gather flexible employment success stories from military spouses. And that we were able to get actually a great deal of really good information about how military spouses have explored flexible employment within that campaign. So this, in addition to other organic conversations that I've had within my position at Military Family Services, is really where I've gathered all this information. And what we're talking about today is trends that we've seen in this data and trends in the comments that military spouses have given to us. So before we get started into the tips, is there any questions about kind of where the info is coming from, where we're headed today? Any questions or comments yet?
I don't see anything coming up in the chat there, right? Yep, Katie. That was great. I think it's nice to know where the information comes from because it gives us a relative jumping off point for what we're looking at moving forward.
Exactly, yeah. And you'll notice actually on the bottom of each tip, I made sure to include some of the quotes that we're specifically drawing from military spouses. So most of them are actually the exact quotes that some military spouses have given us, and some of them have been a little bit summarized. So if at any point you see a quote that you think you might have submitted, please let us know. Type in the chat that you think it's your words, because that would be definitely a huge coincidence. So the first tip, which is fairly I think a lot of you probably know this, but often at times can get pushed to the side because of all the other demands that come along with military family life. So one thing, because of this way our system works, and especially in Canada, again, I can't speak to how things function in the US, but planning in advance, especially when it comes to certain aspects of your career, when you get that transfer, when you get the posting message, is super important. And understanding that that doesn't always happen because you have a million other things on your plate as soon as you get that message that you have to start planning. And so if you can prioritize just a few things, it could make a big difference. One of the first things is, and it's not on the first thing on the list, but I would probably say the #1 thing to prioritize, if it applies to you, is transferring your professional credentials. So just out of curiosity, by show of hands, if you've ever had to transfer your professional credentials, could you just put up your hand? Just because it's not everyone, and so we have 1. So I think, Brenda, you mentioned that you were 2, Allison. Yeah, so it's not, we see in our data that around 17% of military spouses say that transferring their professional licenses have been issues for them. And the big issue that we see, we've actually dove into this a little bit, and is that it's not necessarily the transfer process that, you know, if you're a nurse in Nova Scotia, that you can't be a nurse in BC, but it's the time that it takes to transfer that license. So there are exceptions between provinces and territories where you may have to jump through a few more hoops to actually get your license. But the biggest issue and what we've actually been trying to bring down is that time frame. And just so no one's caught off guard, and I know that for those who have had to transfer it, I'm curious if you could actually type in the chat how long it took you to transfer, on average, your license between provinces. We've seen the license transfer process take up to over a year. And so that's from when you submit your documents. And so if you're waiting till you get, you know, in your new location and start submitting your documents because you've had so many other things to do, obviously, that will put you out of the workforce for quite a while. So try to prioritize that. We have a lot, I'll give you a resource where we have a step-by-step process as to what to do. And also another thing you can do is look at some occupational outlook for the new city that you're going to. So, you know, the occupational data in Canada has actually improved quite a bit. And what I mean by that is if you are a bank representative or a customer service representative at a bank, and you're looking to see, you know, what are those jobs, how are they looking in their new place, there's actually a few places you can go to see, and it almost just helps you set your expectations as to what you're walking into. And so I have a link in the next slide that will show you where you can go to get that information. And then also, you guys, everyone knows this, again, this first tip isn't really groundbreaking, but it's just a reminder. Make sure you look at what can be covered in the integrated relocation program, because from a lot of the emails that we've gotten from spouses, they actually weren't aware that there are some expenses that can be covered. And I'm not going to list them because it really depends on the different funding pockets that you're using and how much you use. So, you know, I'm not ignorant to the fact that it's not always black and white. But there are some expenses that can be covered when it comes to your career transition and employment-related expenses that you may be surprised is covered. So take a look at that integrated relocation program and what's covered, and maybe even ask around. Yeah, so a little bit of planning, even though, you know, you potentially are trying to find a house, you're trying to find schools, you're trying to get everything else in line, even if you can just take like a few concentrated hours to look at this transfer process in advance, it really could save you some months out of the workforce when you get there. And in terms of resources, so here we just have some resources when it comes to labor mobility. We have done quite a bit of work actually with Employment and Social Development Canada just to make sure that we have the accurate information we're giving to military spouses. So if you go to that second link there, it talks about who you can contact to get more information, or if you think that there's issues with your licensing, like the employer that where you're moving to is actually causing you, the licensing bodies trying to get you to do more work than you actually should, there's places you can call. So there's provincial representatives that you can call. So take a look there for some more information. If you're looking on employment insurance for military families, there's actually a direct link that the Ombudsman has put up to go through information on employment insurance for military families. We get a lot of questions on that as well. So that could be something that if you want to limit kind of that gap in getting your employment insurance, it might be something you want to look at sooner than later as well. So we see here, just taking a quick look at the chat, Brenda said, yeah, provincially at least a year. And Brenda, we have seen that. I think, if I don't remember, you are a nurse. We have seen that nursing is actually one of the biggest challenges, and it depends on which province you're going to. So it's not okay. Being out of the workforce a year because of paperwork isn't okay. Unfortunately, that's where it's at right now. So the sooner you get going on that paperwork, the better. And someone else mentioned that Allison, you mentioned that you have a mutual recognition agreement across Canada, which is excellent. Canada actually has done really good work in creating what we call labor mobility. So across the country, unless there's about, it's been actually a little bit that I've been removed from this, so I don't want to say how many exceptions there are, but there's a list of exceptions that have to do with public security mostly. And so unless you're part of one of those exceptions, you should be able to move your trade or career across the country without much interruption. But yes, when you hit into these exceptions, nursing is in the exception category, depending on the province, you can run into some delays. So. Yeah, and we have heard a lot of feedback, Michelle, from OutCan spouses about how tricky it can be. And so I'm not speaking directly to that just because I would say it's not my area of expertise. But if you are looking for information on specifically the OutCan, transferring licensing OutCan or whatnot, you can send me an email or one of your MFS US reps, and we can get you the links that you need for that.
Thank you for clarifying that, Katie, because I think that's something that we all sort of struggle with coming out. It's a great opportunity for a lot of things, especially normally for our uniformed members, career-wise. But then again, we're already taking hits in the career department on the spousal side. So knowing that we can funnel questions up to you through either the MFSCs locally or to reach out to you to get any assistance with that or insight is, I think, a very helpful tool for all of us.
Yeah, and again, we use it as a data mining opportunity as well, right? If you're asking the question, then someone else is asking the question, and maybe it means we need to get some resources on it. So that's really how, to be honest, we go about, depending on what comes back through surveys and the questions that we're getting from families, that's how we know what information is needed. So please, yes, do ask your questions that you have.
And I did see just in the participants panel, I'm not sure if Allison Scott has a question or her hand is up from a previous. Oh, no, I think she's good. Okay, thank you.
So, that's okay, Allison. That's like me in every single meeting. I leave my hand up, so don't worry about it. Okay, so tip number 2, we got this a lot from military spouses. And again, the reason why I'm being so clear that this information is coming from military spouses and not from me, because I don't want to be sitting there and saying that, when you're posted somewhere, you don't have a job, it's up to you to get in there and start doing everything you can to beef up your resume. This is coming from some military spouses saying that they have been stuck in really unfortunate situations where potentially they've been posted somewhere where there's not a lot of professional opportunities. They've been posted somewhere where they don't speak the first language. They've been posted OutCan where they can't seem to get their license transferred or even find a job, or their visa has taken the time to come through. And they've done things to kind of make the best of the situation. And part of that is maximizing your time between moves. And so in the chat, if you have done any of this, so maybe you've been OutCan and you haven't been able to work full time, or you haven't been able to work at the job that you like, have you done anything to maximize your time during this move, during this posting? Some examples of that could be participating in free training or paid training, depending on what you're looking for, volunteering part-time, for positions that will help you build up your experience, working with a trained career counselor or coach to map out your transferable career. Has anyone on the call, I know Michelle, you said you volunteered and taken some training online. Has anyone else stepped into any one of these things where they've capitalized on their time OutCan, whether you're working or not working? It's a little bit different. We are in COVID, so it is a bit tricky. Training and volunteering, awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Thank you for volunteering for MFS, Sandy. That's fantastic. Yeah, so and one thing I want to put here is how we put volunteering part-time. The reason I put that is because, volunteering still should be a part-time gig, unless your life really does allow for it, either financially and you're not looking to work at all. You want to allow yourself some time to still continue with that career planning and job search. And so whenever we're talking about volunteering for the purpose, of your career, obviously also to give back to your community, but for the purpose of your career, we really try to encourage focusing on a part-time basis because you don't want to overwhelm yourself. And volunteering, just anywhere is amazing. It's great for our community. MFS, MFRCs would not be the same without military families who volunteer, but we're really talking about a tailored volunteer opportunities. And an example, like I have actually earlier on in my career, I was looking to switch from, I was working as a business analyst type position, I was looking to switch into career training, but I wasn't sure that I wanted to work in the field because I wasn't exactly sure what it meant. I saw that there was a need. I was working with some newcomers to the country, and I wanted to see like, oh, maybe this is something I can do down the road. And so before just going back to school and getting some training, I actually took a volunteer position. At that time, I was unattached, so I had the extra time at night to do it and to, you know, didn't have many restrictions on my time. So I was doing it 2 or 3 times a week, volunteering at an organization that provided career support and services to newcomers. And I think I did that for quite a bit, actually, like 6 months to a year, and got the feel for what the industry was like. And through that position, I would actually say, had I not taken that volunteer position, I would not be in the role that I am now over a decade later. So it really helped me, 1, make that jump into a new career, 2, make contact within the career counseling realm. It also got me my first job in the career, the career field, and it gave me my first experience. I used it as a professional experience actually on my resume. I just put volunteer next to it in the field. So it was my only thing on my resume when I applied for my first job as a career. At that time it was a kind of like a career counselor. It was the only thing on my resume that I had experience with, but with my other work experience, it was enough to get me the job. So it doesn't always work out like that, but it's my experience with strategic volunteering, and I think a lot of people, a lot of military spouses have done that. I'm just looking at here that people have been attending online information sessions for professional development. Yeah, great. And even today, this is a form of professional development, so it's great that you're all here. So resources here, the MFRC Second Language Training Program, depending on the MFRC, and Michelle, maybe you can, I should have checked with you on this first. I believe your MFS US does offer the SLT training online, correct?
So we do have the Rosetta Stone licenses as well. I'm not sure, Joanna, if you want to, Joanna used to be the one to administer our Rosetta Stone, but I think that's our primary second language opportunity.
Yeah, and so in other MFRCs, depending on the center, there is more, sometimes there's in-class or virtual classes available. It all depends on the center. Online training platforms. So I don't know, and just maybe a show of hands again, has anyone here participated in like a free, what we call a mock course? So it's like a free course you can take online that is usually pre-recorded, sometimes from a university, and yeah, sometimes you can pay to get a certificate at the end. So we call them mock courses. So Michelle, you've taken one. Anyways, they're a really good opportunity to start to get some knowledge. You can take courses from Excel to business presenting to nutrition. And on the online training platform link that I have there, we list some major platforms who offer this free, really professional courses that you can dive into. We also have our portfolio program and our career career counseling program called Your Career Path. And another show of hands, has anyone participated either in the portfolio program or the Your Career Path program that MFS offers? So Sandy. Do you mind, and if you want, Sandy, feel free to unmute yourself, and if you want to tell us about the program, or if you want to type in the chat also, you're welcome to do that. Which one you did participate in, or okay, so we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about those programs. So The MFS Portfolio Program, it's run by the Trenton MFRC, but we fund it on a national level, and it runs twice a year. That's a really good opportunity for you to gather all of the experience that you've had, put it into a portfolio type resource, and have it with you you can bring it to job interviews, you can use it just for your own career planning, and you can use it also to try to get credentials at times. You can use it to, not to fight for credentials, but to use it to get assessed at a post-secondary institution, and sometimes you can get credit for it. So it's a great opportunity to go through and really do that self-assessment of all your skills. Our career training program is, we wish we could offer it to more spouses, but it is limited to around 50 to 100 spouses every year based on need. It's a virtual career training program where we partner military spouses with professional career coaches, with a company that we hire to do it, and they go through really planning out a transferable career, or a career that's suited to your military family lifestyle. I personally think this program is amazing. We've had very good results coming out of it. The program has already been launched for this year, and applications are closed. We have 50 spouses going through it right now. And as an OutCan spouse, we usually prioritize your participation, just for heads up. It will be coming out hopefully again in the fall, so stay tuned for that. Then we have other links there just to other employment programs. So our third tip, and this was interesting, I don't know who it was that typed this in the beginning, but they said these exact words: think outside the box. So this is one thing that when I first came on board in 2015, in Canada, different types of work were starting to develop, but it wasn't as advanced as it is now, even just 6 years later, especially because of COVID. You know, the way work is going has changed completely. I know, like, I'm in my office, I'm at home, my husband's at home, most people are at home right now working, and so the world of work is changing. And so when you're looking either at your next career move, you really, really need to keep that in mind. And this is what this military spouse was talking about, and they said specifically, don't be afraid to think outside the box, but do your research. So there's tons of opportunities out there, but it doesn't mean that they're all great. But things that you might want to ask yourself are, could you work for an employer who's completely virtual, or who would allow you to work from home all the time? Could you be a freelancer? Is it something that you'd be looking at just taking contract jobs, working for yourself, but taking contract jobs from various employers? Would you want to start your own business? Great questions to ask yourself, because these are some options that we've seen a lot of military spouses go towards in order to allow for not only military spouses, workers in general in Canada starting to navigate towards to allow for more flexibility with their career. Another thing that I believe was also mentioned in one of the first questions that I asked you was exploring alternative career options. So that's kind of like looking, if job A isn't available, so your number one job that you would like, what's option B? So if you're a teacher and transferring your license for the 2 years, you transfer your license into the new province, but you're only going to be there for 2 years, and you're at the bottom of the supply list, and it's not something you really want to do right now. Okay, so what would option B be? Can anyone think of examples? Like, if you were looking for an alternative career to being a teacher, you weren't going to actually work in the public system. Can anyone kind of think, and in the chat maybe type what an alternative career could be? Yeah, training specialist in an industry. Exactly, Melissa. That is a fantastic, yes, English as a second language, a tutor. So these are actually the exact things that I went to. And you can't also think of it as kind of a step down, but just another opportunity. Like, it's not your option A, but it's your option B, and it's still going to contribute to your career growth, maybe not the level that you want, but it's, using what you have in that situation. A tip for those who are not looking at alternative careers, but for working from home, and we have a ton of resources on there, and it's what this spouse summarized in her feedback down below, is that just to be careful about different opportunities when it comes to working from home, how there's a ton out there, but they're not all legit. And so in one of our resources, we have a link as to how you can kind of filter out some of those really not legitimate work from home opportunities. I'll point that out to you. Another thing that people have done to think outside the box is being a little bit selective with the employers that they choose, and understanding this does not apply to everyone, because some of you cannot be selective with the employers you choose because of your career. But we have heard from some military spouses that they've targeted certain companies that are located close to base. A really obvious option here, and I've heard it from a handful of military spouses that it's one of their things they're looking to work towards, is working for CISIP. So that's at the CFMWS, so the Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services. But a CISIP rep is located on multiple bases across the country. They do have, is obviously CFMWS is a military-friendly organization. If you are in the financial planning field or even in the business field, it could be an option. You have more flexibility to transfer your job than you potentially would with another organization. So another thing that you want to keep in mind is getting to this kind of transferable career, finding that right employer, finding that flexible employment opportunity isn't going to happen overnight. So if it doesn't happen right away, don't be discouraged. Like, we've heard from spouses that it takes a few jobs or maybe a posting to get where they're actually looking to go. But if you don't start planning, if you don't start looking at these out-of-the-box ideas, you're never going to take a step in that direction. And so just start thinking about it. Start thinking outside the box, even if it's just a brainstorming sheet as to, what the ideal career would look like. How would you be working? Where would you be working? What type of things would you be working on? And then start looking to see if that's something that can happen. We do encourage you, if it is available, to use a professional career coach or counselor. If you're going through a career change, or you're trying to map out a transferable career, you're trying to make some changes, that's really why Your Career Path, the program that we started, exists, and we're hoping that we can expand that number of spouses who can participate in that. Also, depending on what what region you end up when you return to Canada, there's some tailored services at MFRCs. So we really encourage you, if you do have the option to work with a professional career counselor, it is a good opportunity to get an outside view of what you're doing. And the last tip when you're thinking outside the box is to plan backwards. So we've seen it so often, and you see it a lot with younger generation, how they can't get a job in their field, so they go back and do their master's. That would probably be the most typical thing that we would see in the career field, is that you can't get a job as an economist, so you go back and get your master's in economics, thinking that that's going to make you more employable, because why shouldn't it? Well, it doesn't always. And so when we're talking to military spouses and your time is so precious, we encourage you to look at your training, to approach training, especially post-secondary, in a backwards format. So look at the job that you want and go find a bunch of opportunities of that specific job in the area that you think you might be located. And then look at the exact qualifications for that job in that position, from experience to abilities to education. And if you have any gaps, fill those gaps. But make sure you're doing it related on the exact job that you're looking for, as opposed to just going into a program hoping it provides you with a job, because nowadays it really just doesn't always happen that way. So planning backwards, very important, especially when when you're returning to school. So we're just halfway through. I do want to pause and just see if anyone has any questions or comments, even on the resources that we've talked about so far, the programs that we've talked about. just feel free to kind of pop in there. Or actually, just out of curiosity, because we just finished the Think Outside the Box, has anyone here worked either as a freelancer or kind of in a flexible position with an employer, either since being out CAN or just at all in their career? I know that 2 of the individuals on the call are working in flexible employment opportunities right now. Joanna and Michelle both. I know you're both working from home. Has anyone else worked either as a freelancer or working from home for an employer? All right, so I'll let you type that in, and I'll just go through these resources here. The number one that I wanted to point out is this Military Spousal Employment Network. So that's our flagship program at MFS for employment, and it's a network of 19 national employers or flexible employers. Okay, so we do have a few, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. We do have a few people. So Katrina, you are working from home. Okay, and Melissa, you're working from home too. Oh, Lori's working from home with MFS. Excellent. Yeah, so totally preaching to the choir here. You guys have found some flexible positions that have been moving with you. And out of curiosity, so for those who are working from home for an employer or either as a contractor, what's one of the biggest challenges, I guess, that you've come across working from home? So there's a few MFS employees on. So if you could just type in your biggest challenge that you've come across working from home in there, that would be great. So balancing work-home life, yeah, we hear that a lot. Awesome, Kim, you work from home now with MFS, okay. Yeah, so yeah, if you do have any tips or one of the biggest challenges, please type them in there for working from home. Yeah, work is always there. Yeah, so take a look at those. I'm just going to go over these resources. Thanks everyone for commenting. It's great. So the resource we have, the Military Spousal Employment Network, is our flagship program. I think right now we have around 4,200 military spouses who are joined up to the network. It is 19 national and virtual employers who are there and who are not giving priority hiring to military spouses, but have essentially put up their hand and say, we value military spouses, we value what they bring to the table, and we want to provide them with equal opportunities. We also will target some of our employment recruitment to them. So they participate in, job fairs and whatnot with the program. So it's a great thing to just put in your back pocket. It's similar to the MySECO program that the states would have, or the OneSource program. And so not as big, not even as close, on a small scale, but it is a great resource to have. So right now it is promoting jobs that are in Canada. There are a handful of work from home jobs, and whether or not you can use those working outside of Canada or not really would depend on the job. So I just encourage you that if you are job searching right now and you're looking for flexible employment opportunities, head into the network, go to the job bank and look at the work from home opportunities, and you can contact those employers directly. So I'm actually going to type in if you go into, I'm just typing something in. So if you go into each employer booth, there's a military spouse employer contact. So that is an individual at each employer who will be fielding all questions from military spouses. And so if you are an out-can spouse looking for work and you see a work from home position on the network, just contact the military spouse employer contact and say, hey, I'm living outside of Canada right now, I'm a Canadian, can I still apply for this job? I can't answer on each specific job, but it's worth a shot to ask. And then we have the portfolio program, the HERC program, which is our online entrepreneurship training program. And the resource I really want to highlight here is our flexible employment resources. So we have some videos, some tip sheets, some explanations on online platforms, being a freelancer. just a really good group of resources there for anyone who's looking to really take their career on a flexible route. So just you can head over there for those resources. So we're almost there, and then we'll get to some questions at the end. And here's tip number 4. And for show of hands, I want to know if anyone has done this. And so you can wait till I explain what it is. So the tip is ask for what you need. And essentially before quitting your job, you get the posting message, you're headed from Ottawa to Comox. Okay, so you have 6 months, you have to tell your employer, you know, I'm headed out, I have to resign because I'm relocating for my spouse's employment. Have you ever approached your employer and asked if there was any possibility for 1, for you to take your job with you, or 2, for there to be a transfer within the organization to your next location? And I mean actually asking them, not just assessing the situation and being like, that's not going to happen, it's not going to work out, my boss would never go for that. But actually putting it forward, scheduling a meeting and asking your employer if there's any opportunity for you to stay within the company. Because what we've heard from a lot of military spouses is do not be afraid to ask your employer and also suggest to your employer ways that a flexible work arrangement can be made. When we say ask for what you want, obviously you're not going to go sit down at your boss's desk and say, hey, I need another job in Comox, BC. Could you please give me one? What we encourage you to do is to actually set out a plan. Come to your supervisor or your superior fully prepared with a case that outlines how an arrangement could work, you know, how that would look, what type of work hours could you work, would it be for a trial period that you can then assess to see if the arrangement is working. Make the case for why the company doesn't want to lose you, why they want to keep you. And really, it can't hurt. You're leaving your job already, so why not do this? And we've seen spouse after spouse be able to transfer their career because they took this strategic approach in asking for what they need. Can you take a leave of absence from your position? Obviously not ideal, but if you come back into the province again, you might be able to pick up that position in 3 or 4 years. And like you see in the second quote here, there's a spouse who really maintained somewhat of a career with the federal government doing exactly that. If he or she couldn't get transferred within the federal government, they took a leave of absence or leave without pay, found another job, and then when they were able to step back into the federal government, they got their job back. So I'm just looking at Lindsay's comment here. So you're saying that you did. Okay, so you were able to ask your employer. Awesome. So you said that you were able to ask your employer. They were able to offer you a term contract, but only if I was going to stay at our old posting. That's awesome. Good for you. Excellent. Yeah, so you think that you'd be able to move with your next position, which is great. I think really COVID sucks for so many reasons, but if you're thinking about it strategically as a military spouse, it really can play in your favor. And I'm not saying play in your favor as in we're taking advantage of the situation, but just the fact that the way people are working has changed. Even at Military Family Services, like there's a ton of people on here from MFS that are working from home, but when you're actually located in Ottawa, it's not, at least last year, it wasn't a highly encouraged thing to work from home if you were in the city. But now we're all working from home, and I foresee that it's probably going to change within our organization out in the city. And so use that to your advantage. Think about your next job move. Like think about asking your employer. It might be different if you're moving back into Canada, but you know, when you're in your next job, before you go to your next posting, think about asking for what you need. I'm really excited, Lindsay, that you were able to do that, and I hope it works for you next time you have to move. And tip number 5, maximize your network. I hate the word networking. If you hate the word networking and hate networking, and not everyone does, please raise your hand. When I hear networking, there we go. Okay, good, I'm not alone. When I hear networking, I cringe. I would definitely lean towards more of the introverted side, and walking into a room of people and having to randomly talk with people is just not my cup of tea. And some people it is, and they rock at it, and it really helps them project their career, like propel their career, but not me. So networking, maximizing your network just looks completely different nowadays and looks completely different depending on your personality. So don't worry. One thing military spouses have said over and over again is to maximize first your network with military spouses. So we have heard so many times of a military spouse giving a referral to another military spouse into a position. You know, not getting them the job, but helping them get the foot in the door because, you know, their employer was looking for people to hire. So the first thing when you start networking, just let some of the people you know who are located in your next location know that you're looking for work. You'd be surprised at what that can actually do. And we don't mean, you know, badger them until they give you a referral. It's just a casual letting people know you're looking for work. If you're headed to Halifax and you know 3 spouses in Halifax, reach out to them, let them know, hey, do you have any tips? I'm looking to get into this industry. Do you know anyone I could meet with? Simple as that. You'd be surprised what that can lead to. Join virtual or in-person groups and associations. Even just on LinkedIn, like you don't have to talk to people, just on LinkedIn, you'd be surprised at how many jobs actually get posted through these associations and groups. I know that even through MFS at times, we've targeted some of our jobs through various associations because we know that's where those professionals meet. Build up your online network using LinkedIn, especially nowadays. There's probably some cases out there where you don't need a LinkedIn profile. Like there are certain jobs that you wouldn't necessarily need it for, but those are few and far between. So if you're looking to maintain a career in a public job, so not just being self-employed for yourself or working in a regulated profession that you don't necessarily have to always compete for positions, get on LinkedIn and get a LinkedIn profile. You don't need to talk to people to do that. And we have some tips and there's some training. I think someone actually said there was in the chat, another training session. Yeah, I'm just popping into the chat right now. And so just looking here at what people are saying, I'm so glad I'm not the only one who hates forced talking. And there we saw someone who said they love networking. Okay, well, good for you, Allison. That's fantastic. It does help with the hidden job market, Melissa. So thanks for all those comments. Great comments. And the last one we encourage you to do is perform informational interviews. And these do not need to be you know, something that's nerve-wracking or even super formal. An informational interview is when you know someone or you know someone who knows someone who's in an industry or in working with a company, and you just say, hey, you call them up or you get their contact information on LinkedIn, through email, whatever, and you say, I'm looking to really enter into this industry. I want to see if you had any tips for me, and I have some questions to ask you. Can we meet for coffee for 15, 20 minutes at this location? Or can we have a quick, you know, chat on the phone? I have a few questions for you. That's really all it is. You'd be so surprised at where that goes. And working in careers, like people do this at the highest levels of careers, you know, like people who are looking into working as directors and senior managers and organizations are doing these type of informational interviews. So get on it. Even if you're looking to get back into, you're coming back into Canada, like you can be doing this type of research right now in the States so that you can pave the way for when you're headed back into the country. And here's some resources. So here's a LinkedIn training videos. LinkedIn actually has like so many good videos. There's no need to recreate. That's the LinkedIn YouTube page, and they have videos from, you know, how to show employers that you're looking for work, what to include in your profile, how to build your profile. So really a ton of stuff there. There's also a free course that we encourage you, if you do have time, a free course on networking and creating your brand. And that was created by Google and Udacity. Really good course. Another thing you could do if you have time And always, we encourage you to go into the Military Spousal Employment Network to look at what's around and to also network with those military spouse employer contacts. So reach out to them, send them emails, ask them questions about their company. Okay, we've reached the end. And this was the one that I was probably, as a non-military spouse and a non-really military affiliated individual, didn't feel enormously comfortable presenting because I don't want to be someone who's coming in and just telling you, you know, acknowledge the challenge and then embrace the change. But this is what military spouses have been telling us. And what we've seen, we've even had, and I have an excellent resource on the next page of a panel discussion we had from some military spouses who have been able to navigate their career through OutCan, back in, out, back in, and have been able to do it. And one of the key trends, or one of the common factors we see, is attitude when it comes to embracing some of these issues. And so I didn't put any of my own words into this. This is straight from military spouses. Here it's just leaving them all there. Not going to read through them. This is what your fellow military spouses are telling you, is to really not to say ignore the challenges that have faced, ignore some of the injustices that have been faced. No, acknowledge them. It's not fair that it takes a year for a nurse to transfer their license when it's their spouse that is serving the country to move to another province and is out of work for a year. No, that's not fair. But right now it is what it is. So acknowledging it and then trying to embrace the change and trying to embrace it and kind of work with what you've been given. It's obviously, and what we see is it's an up and down battle. And I think someone said in the beginning, I forget what the wording was, but in a sense that it was like a roller coaster ride, and that's what it's going to be. But we really have seen that spouses who get to the point where they're embracing the change or trying to work with it are sometimes able to navigate the situation a little better. And again, it's not making everything perfect. Nothing goes away. All the challenges are still there. But even in the beginning, it already looked like most of you are doing this because of all of the tips that you came out with are really about, you know, trying new things, think outside the box. Flexibility and adaptability are huge, yes. But it's not to diminish the challenges that are being faced. But once you get to the point where, and I want to take it to a point of, I have a personal experience that we're acknowledging a challenge I personally have faced in my career with my health, and it's been completely debilitating and a huge disability when it comes to me being able to work professionally. And without going into too many details, you know, I've come to the point, it's been 4 years going through it, that eventually I just kind of had to accept what I've been given and what I've been faced with and go embrace the change that I'm now in, which is right now it's a part-time position. So I actually only work part-time because of some health issues that I have. And it took a lot of, probably 3 years of fighting it, fighting what was happening to me before I actually accepted the change and the challenge that I've been given, and now I'm trying to embrace it. But I'm still not happy with the situation. I'm still trying to make it improve. I'm still always trying to make things get better. But after I started to embrace it, things started to roll a little bit easier for me. So that's the big last tip. Flexibility and adaptability, you're right, Lori, are so huge. And here's just one resource that I was talking about, the panel that we had. We called Lessons from the Field. So it's from 3 military spouses who successfully navigated common career challenges. We really encourage you to take a look at that. You probably know one of the 3 spouses. It's just such a small world that you probably do. And here's some more additional tools. We have some career training videos from past training experiences here. There's the Military Spousal Employment Initiative, which is with the federal government, that is looking at, actually offers in somewhat of a priority way, it's a little bit confusing as to the word, offers temporary 90-day positions to military spouses. So it's a federal government pool that exists across the public service now, that is specifically for military spouses, and is open to all hiring managers in the government to access for temporary positions. So not full-time positions, not permanent positions, but temporary positions in the federal public service. Great opportunity, specifically if you're looking to get your foot back in the door in Canada. Take a look at that link. We have some scholarships here, which we're seeing more and more spouses apply for. So you are eligible for some of these Support Our Troops scholarships. They're not just for military children, they're for military spouses as well, so take a look there. And then we have our military spousal employment page where we post all things spousal employment on a national level, so feel free to join there. That is the end of my presentation. You guys have been fantastic, very interactive in the chat, and I really appreciate it. I think we've asked questions all throughout, so I don't know if there'll be any questions here at the end. But if you do, feel free to put up your hand or raise your hand. You can speak or you can type the question in the chat as well.
Thank you so much, Katie. I think that we've had an awesome level of engagement over this this presentation, which has been great. And I'll just take a peek at the chat as well to see if anybody has any questions. We can probably also just remind everybody that if you do have other questions about employment and entrepreneurship and that kind of thing when you leave the session today, please reach out to your local MFRC if you're in Canada, or MFSC, your local MFS coordinator in your OCAN location, and we can always either get a hold of Katie, get some information, or link you together to get those questions answered, or some resources put on your plate for you.
Yeah. And I love the promotion we got for the MSBI program here, that Lindsay got 2 hiring managers contact her, so that's great.
Awesome.
At least we know it's working. We're really happy, and we did no heavy lifting on this program. We're really just promoting it. It's the public service who's doing all of that.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you so much for letting us know. We're glad you were able to get some communication with hiring managers on that program.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, guys, if you have any questions for Katie, please feel free to let us know now. We will be stopping the recording, and we'll be sharing that in the after session email that you'll get for registering for the